Hi everyone, it's Chef Nick from the Fat Sparrow Group. Welcome back into my kitchen. Today we're cooking our eggplant tagine with couscous. Tagine is a really cool style of cooking, recipe, dish, however you want to call it. It's been around for thousands of years. It's popular in a number of North African countries, therefore you end up with a whole bunch of different varieties on it. Ours today is going to dive into some eggplant and some zucchini and onion, some rich dried fruits like apricot and sun-dried tomatoes, spices like saffron. The trick to these dishes is they're often cooked they're always cooked in these tagine dishes here. I have one that I'm gonna use today. I doubt you will have one at home. So we're gonna teach you how to kind of cheat around that. But this is what a tagine dish looks like. It's got this really kind of neat cone-shaped top that's designed to sort of capture all the steam as the cooking happens and the broth sort of evaporates and send that right back down into the dish. It ends up giving you some really intense flavors, and not to mention it's a beautiful way to present food. Today, for you folks at home, all you really need to come up with is a pan that can go in your oven that's relatively flat with the same kind of edges that the bottom of this pan has. So some walls that you can kind of build up a layer, get that liquid inside, and then a nice tight fitting lid that can go on top and won't allow too much steam to come out. If you can put that together, you'll be fine. If you get really into this dish and you love what you've done, then maybe you want to play around and get one of these bad boys. They're a ton of fun and they're beautiful to look at. So let's get into our box and see what we've got to work with. We have some herbs and some garlic. Our eggplant, sort of the main feature of the dish today. Our zucchini, lemon, dried apricots and sun-dried tomatoes, chickpeas, our tomato broth, olives, our za'atar spice from the Fat Sparrow dry spice lineup. We have couscous and saffron. We'll talk more about that saffron soon. I have half of an onion, and I have some tahini and some extra virgin olive oil. Tahini is just a sesame paste. It's almost like a peanut butter kind of flavor to it, made with sesame seeds. It's gonna be a really nice garnish to this dish. All right, let's get into the cooking and let's see where this takes us. All right, so we're ready to get cooking. One of the first things I'm gonna do is make my saffron tea. We call it a tea because it's basically what it is. You just take the saffron and you steep it in a little bit of hot water. Saffron is known to be the most expensive spice in the world. It's really fun, it has a really unique flavor to it. It gives you this incredible vibrant color. It is the crocuses, or the stamen of a flower. So I'm gonna take that. There's the tiniest little bit, and you're gonna kind of laugh when you see how little you got, but it does go a long way and it's quite expensive. And I'm just gonna take water. I'm gonna take about 3 ounces and pour it over it. And you can see immediately the water starts to turn this really beautiful, vibrant yellow. So I will leave that steep for the entire time that we're prepping everything else, and by the time I'm ready to go, it's ready to use. If you didn't want to steep it ahead of time, you certainly don't need to. You can just sprinkle it on. You'll just end up with really intense pockets of saffron flavor instead of sort of the diluted flavor is what we really want. And you won't get as an intense of a color from it. So I do recommend you make the tea for almost any recipe you ever use this stuff for, and then you would use that tea in your recipe. So I'm just gonna set that aside to steep, and it's sort of fun to watch it transform as it sits. All right, the next thing we'll do is prepare our eggplant. So I always peel my eggplant, especially in a recipe like this. The only times I wouldn't peel my eggplant if I was grilling it whole to make like a roasted eggplant dish or a baba ganoush, and I would actually be peeling the eggplant after the fact anyways. I find the skin of eggplant to be very undesirable color and less than desirable flavor. It's got a sort of bitterness to it. So yeah. Peel your eggplant. I just use a vegetable peeler. If you don't have a nice wide peeler like this, you'll want to use a knife, in which case you would probably cut the thing into sections first and then use a knife to peel it. So our eggplant is peeled. Now we're just going to cut it into slices. I'm going about 1/3 of an inch thick, and I'm just cutting it into slices, into coins, because we're going to kind of layer our vegetables up when we get them in the pan. Now onto the zucchini. We're just gonna do the same thing with the zucchini. I'm not gonna peel it because the skin isn't as strong, but I'm just gonna cut it into nice coins. So same thing, kind of 1/3 of an inch thick coins. And this will be nice to sort of make an attractive platter in our tagine. Next we'll get into our onion. We want to kind of keep it in a wedge form, at least I do. So I'm going to try and keep my root a little bit intact, but I'm still of course going to cut it away. The root can have quite a bit of bacteria in it, so I don't want to leave it in the dish. But like I said, I kind of want to keep the onion in a bit of a shape, so I am going to leave as much of it on there as I can. Into the bin, and then like I said, I'm just going to cut it into wedges, fairly thick, because I'm going to want their texture to sort of hold up a little bit by the time the dish is cooked. Awesome. So that's into wedges, and then that goes aside. Now we'll get into our dried fruits. I'm just going to kind of leave them relatively big, so I'm just going to cut them in half lengthwise. Again, I'm just trying to build up attractive sort of layout in the end, so any shape you come up with is going to work. I'm just trying to leave myself something to be a little playful with when it comes to symmetricalness and stuff. So same with the sun-dried tomatoes, I'm just cutting those in half. Next I'll do my garlic. As always, the garlic is done the same way. Just sort of get it center on the board, put your knife on it, and then just give it a nice thud with your hand. Get it nice and flat. Do the same thing. And that can go aside as well. And then our herbs. So we've got some nice cilantro here and some mint. I'm gonna quickly chop these. These guys are not going to go in the same point as that stuff, so I'll keep it separate. So I'll just give my herbs a rough chop. As always, I don't want to be too hard on my herbs. It'll get sort of a duller flavor if I do, especially the mint. It tends to not appreciate being chopped up too much. So roughly chopped into the bowl. My olives don't need any attention. I think the last thing to do for my mise en place is this lemon. Remember, mise en place just means to put in place, and it's something that we do in the professional kitchens to get all of our prep done before we start cooking. Just makes life easier. So I'm gonna zest this lemon, I'm gonna juice this lemon, and I need them separately, so I've just got 2 bowls here. If you don't have a zester like this, you can use the edge of a box grater, the fine holes of a cheese grater, or a vegetable peeler. You can peel off strips and then use your knife to just cut it into tinier strips. But if you do have one of these, they work marvelously. They're also very versatile. These things are awesome for grating garlic, ginger, horseradish, all kinds of different stuff. Parmesan cheese, so good investment. Then finally, we will just juice our lemon. So cut it in half. I don't see any seeds, and then I'm just gonna juice it. Use my hands to kind of filter out those seeds. If you have a little strainer, it would obviously work easier, but I like to rush through things. That was weird. The first half had about 6 seeds, the second half 0 seeds. Figure that out. All right, now that's aside. We've got all our mise en place done. We can start to build our tagine. All right, so it's time for us to get cooking and assembling our tagine. So I've got my tagine pan. At home, I'm assuming you're using a frying pan or a cast iron pan. So we've got it a little bit warm, nothing too hot. In fact, I can't get this guy too hot. It's meant to be on sort of a lower heat. So I'm gonna throw into my pan about half of this olive oil. And then I'm gonna start building my tagine. So the first thing I'm gonna add is my garlic, because I kind of want it to aromatize in that oil and get a little fried. And then I'm gonna add some of my za'atar spice. So this is coriander, cumin, chili peppers, sumac, among other things, sesame seeds. So that goes in there. Now I'm immediately gonna start building in my eggplant. So I'm gonna actually overlap this a little bit, so it builds out like a bit of a pinwheel. And in she goes. Then, because I don't want my garlic to overcook on me, I'm gonna throw in my broth next. I can smell it, and you'll smell it at home and you'll know when it's time. But I can smell my garlic and my spices that have just toasted exactly how I wanted them, and I kind of want to stop that cooking process immediately. So before I go any further, I've just laid that broth in the bottom just to sort of stop the frying and start the simmering. Next, I'm gonna throw in my onions. So I've got these sort of wedges like we had talked about. I'm gonna lay them around as sort of symmetrically as I can. Then I'll incorporate my zucchini, which I almost regret not putting before the onions. In it goes, same thing. Just kind of trying to be somewhat symmetrical in where I place it and making almost like a flower type of shape. This is all for your own pride and enjoyment. So if you're frustrated with what you're building, don't be, because it's not meant to be that. Besides, look at mine. Awesome. So then I'm gonna put my dried fruits. Yes, tomatoes are a fruit, so in they go. My dried apricots, in they go. What else? My chickpeas. This is sort of the protein of our dinner tonight. So we've got our chickpeas that are ending up all over my stovetop. And our eggplant, of course, is a good source of protein as well. Olives. If you start doing this on your own, you can sort of play around with any different flavors you want, but I always recommend sticking to sort of sets of things that are briny, like our olives, sweet, like our dried fruits, sour, like our dried sun-dried tomatoes, and just make sure you kind of have a broad spectrum of all those different flavors. That way, when this thing sort of cooks together and steams itself, it's gonna have that incredible sort of balance and overall flavor profile. And then the only thing left to go on this is the saffron tea that we made earlier. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pour that right over my veggies. Careful not to miss the pan. And then I'll just find a spoon or something to make sure I got every last little strand of saffron out. Yeah, this is already smelling quite incredible. The mixture of this saffron, those spices and the za'atar blend, the olives, all those amazing flavors, it's already coming together really nicely. After some time in the pan, it's gonna be quite incredible. So I'm gonna throw a little bit more of my za'atar spice on top. I am gonna season it with a little bit of salt because there's a lot of stuff in there and not much of it had salt. Of course, the olives bring some salt and the broth had a tiny bit in it, but we do wanna make sure we've seasoned it. And then it's time for the lid. So once I put this lid on it, I'm gonna fire it in my oven. I've got it set to 375 degrees. It'll take about 40 minutes in there. So I do wanna make sure my lid fits tight, so make sure my beautiful veggies are inside of it. Now into the oven this will go. So if you've been doing it in your smaller pan or your different sized pan, obviously it might look a little differently at this stage, but we've got the same impact happening where we've got all those things layered, we've got a bit of broth, we've got that extra virgin olive oil, all those spices. It's gonna spend some time together in the oven. All right, tagine is in the oven. It's gonna be about 40 minutes in there. I've set my timer. Now let's move on to our couscous. Couscous is just it's like a pasta essentially. It's a toasted grain that's been processed into this beautiful thing that steams up super, super fast, super easy. It's very versatile and I don't think it's terrible for you. So we're gonna use it today. It's the perfect companion to the tagine and it's very simple to make. So it's gonna be a 1 to 1.25 measurement ratio. So we've got 1 part couscous, so then I'm gonna measure out 1 1/4 parts water and add it to it. There we have 1 1/4 parts. If you get it slightly wrong, it's not that important. It just might result in a slightly soggier couscous or a slightly drier one. So we've turned on our heat. We're gonna bring it to a boil. We're gonna add a little bit of salt because the couscous didn't come with any. And that's about all we're gonna add to it. You could throw bay leaves, you could throw more saffron, you could throw other things in there, but I wanna leave mine pretty plain because I want it to really suck up the flavor in the broth that we're gonna create over in our tagine. So I've got this on. Essentially, once this comes to a boil, I'm gonna put a lid on it and turn it off and then leave it for about 10 minutes. And the couscous will just steam itself inside the pot and we will be ready to go. So we'll wait for that to come to a boil. In the meantime, we can make our tahini and lemon drizzle. The tahini lemon drizzle will be one of the garnishes for our finished dish. It's gonna provide us just with a really nice sort of creamy flavor, a base level that will help reset all the other flavors. You'll understand, I think, when you get into it. But in the meantime, all you need to do, take your lemon juice, take your tahini paste, and mix them together. I'm not gonna worry about putting any salt in this because the lemon juice is so bright and acidic, it's gonna be popping with flavor. And the sesame seed paste already has a little bit of its own kind of umami. So much like peanut butter, we don't need to add salt to it. So this will be a little stubborn to mix just because the lemon is what it is. It's lemon juice, and the sesame paste is basically a really, really thick oil. So it'll take me a couple of minutes to incorporate this. You could use a fork for quicker results. My spoon will work eventually. In the meantime, My couscous is coming to a boil, and you can see it's actually almost already cooked. It's absorbed probably half of that water already, and they've really started to plump up. Okay, my couscous water is now boiling. It's almost a porridge. I'm gonna throw a lid on it, turn the heat off, and just set that aside. I'll leave it for 10 minutes, and then I'll come back. We'll re-season it, and we'll give it a fluff, and we'll be done. All right, our couscous is sat for about 10 minutes now. It's perfectly cooked. You can see that it's just soaked up all of that water. It's risen, it's grown quite a bit in shape. So we're just gonna fluff it. By doing that, we're just gonna kind of turn it. Similar thing you might do to rice under certain circumstances. We're gonna do that here. The only other trick I'm gonna do is add some of this extra virgin olive oil. This is actually gonna season it. It's also gonna help me fluff it a little bit and keep everything kind of from bumping into each other too much. I know that looks like a lot, but this is extra virgin olive oil. It tastes delicious, and it's gonna have a nice impact on our dish. So now we're just in here kind of breaking it up. You wanna do so gently because you don't want it to get all mushy on you. You want it to fluff. So I'm kind of folding it, and then I'm gently kind of breaking the grains apart again. And you can see it's cooperating nicely, and it's turning into a fairly nice and fluffy result. The longer you let it sit before fluffing, the harder it'll be. So don't let it sit around for too long, otherwise you'll end up with lumps. You don't want lumps in your couscous, your friends will make fun of you. All right, I can really smell that olive oil. It's got a really nice sort of aroma to it, nice pungency. I'm gonna check this for seasoning. And then it's pretty much there. I am gonna add just a pinch more salt. I'll give that a bit of a mix, and I'll set it aside until our tagine is ready. All right, so our tagine is out of the oven. The smells in the house are amazing. You can smell the saffron and the olives and those eggplant. Everything's kind of come together in a really beautiful way. It's time to reveal what we've done. So we've got some beautiful steam. You can smell the way that those flavors have concentrated. It's just incredible. We don't have that traditional browning that you might used to see, perhaps if we did a ratatouille or a bialdi, but the idea here is that we've just concentrated all those flavors. So while the zucchini is nice and green, it doesn't have that browning that you might look for in other times. It's just gonna be a whole different experience, different type of textures, different type of flavors. So the last thing I'm gonna do is just top it with my torn mint and cilantro and our lemon zest. I've combined the three of them together in this bowl just to be easy to drizzle or to sprinkle. And I'm just throwing that on top, and it's just one more layer. You can smell it immediately. I'm getting this awesome pungent lemon smells, the mint, the cilantro. This is gonna be awesome. I've got my tahini sauce with the lemon. We've got our steamed couscous. We've got the yummy broth in the middle. The way all this is gonna come together, it's gonna be fantastic. So I'm gonna dig into this. Thank you guys so much for joining me, from all of us at Fat Sparrow, from Chef Nick, from the folks who love tagines. Thank you guys for your support, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers, bon appetit.